The war in Vietnam tears America apart. Anti-war activists take to the streets, and the government reacts with tear gas and bayonets. Unknown to the American public, a secret report was commissioned by Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara. The highly classified document contains evidence of lying by the government about the reasons the war is being fought and the probability of success. In 1971, Daniel Ellsberg, one of the select group of Pentagon analysts who wrote the classified study, turns against the war.
They were prepared to prolong a war and expand a war at each step rather than to lose it, and Nixon was the same.
I want to end this war. The American people want to end this war.
Ellsberg believes that Nixon's pledge to get out of Vietnam is not to be trusted.
All I could do was to put out top-secret documents of history showing every previous president acted the way I claim Nixon is acting. Read this and see if you don't think you should look very closely at what Nixon is doing. Challenge him, have hearings, call witnesses, find out whether he really means to get out.
Ellsberg leaks the secret documents to the New York Times. Editors have to decide whether to publish them. It causes a heated debate within the paper.
It went on for 3 months, and all the time we were examining it, meetings took place, and they got extremely tense at some times because one or two of the editors didn't want us to print it. They felt it was not right. Nothing like this had been done. Did we have the right to do it? Did we have the right to withhold it?
The decision to make the papers public is not an easy one. Stakes are high.
Because, you know, if we were wrong and this was something that hurt a single soldier, we would live with it forever.
Sunday, June 13th, 1971. The New York Times begins its explosive series based on the Pentagon Papers.
I felt that we were doing our duty. I knew the government would have a heart attack.
The Nixon administration is outraged. They say printing classified documents in the New York Times risks national security.
We subscribe to the Bill of Rights, but they are not absolute in any circumstance.
The Attorney General orders the New York Times to stop, but the paper refuses and lands in federal court.
The United States of America comes into the courtroom for the first time in the history of our republic and asks for a temporary restraining order, restraining the nation's most preeminent newspaper, the New York Times, from further publishing material because of national security considerations. It never before had happened.
The Nixon administration wins a restraining order against the New York Times. For the first time in U.S. history, a newspaper is prevented from printing a story. Now Daniel Ellsberg leaks the documents to the Washington Post. Publisher Katharine Graham faces the decision of a lifetime, to print or not to print.
And she told me, look, it wasn't the most cerebral of decisions, but at the end of a minute, she simply said, go ahead, publish it.
When the Washington Post is stopped from printing, a determined Daniel Ellsberg gives the documents to the Boston Globe.
Newspaper after newspaper defied the executive branch of the U.S. government, defied the president, who was telling them that for them to publish these papers on their own initiative would endanger the United States.
The case quickly advances to the Supreme Court. 9 justices will have to decide if the government has proved the publication of the Pentagon Papers is so dangerous it must be stopped. What is really at stake? Soldiers' lives or politicians' reputations? On June 30th, 1971, in a hushed and expectant courtroom, the decision is announced. It is 6-3 for the press.
I think it's reaffirmed the fact that that a free press in our country is entitled to run the way people like to run a free press, that the government can't just march in and stop us from publishing.